The storm had no mercy. For 3 long days, the alien planet had drowned under violent rain. Endless floods and waves taller than broken buildings. The sky looked black, the air smelled like fear. And everything that once lived there had already escaped into space. Only one small island piece remained above the water. And on that tiny patch of broken ground stood an alien mother holding her shivering child close to her chest. Her clothes were torn, her skin cold, and her eyes full of hopelessness. The water around her kept rising inch by inch, like the planet wanted to swallow her alive. Every city was already buried under dark water, every road disappeared. And even the mountains had fallen into the sea. The mother looked up at the sky and whispered, "Please, someone. Please hear us." Her distress device was badly damaged. Half broken from the storm, it gave off a soft, weak blink every few seconds, the last life in a dying machine. She pressed the button again and again with shaking fingers, hoping the signal would travel far enough for anyone to hear. Beside her, the child cried softly, his small hands wrapped around her arm, his thin body trembling because the water now touched his feet. He was too young to understand what abandoned meant, but old enough to feel death getting closer, far above in space. A lone human pilot sat inside his old rescue cruiser. He was traveling through the sector, tired from long missions, planning to rest at the next station, but then something strange caught his eye. A small, flickering signal appeared on his screen, almost too weak to notice. He leaned closer, confused. "Is that a distress call? From a drowned planet?" He muttered. His ship AI responded coldly. "Planet Zyron 9 is declared lost. All survivors evacuated. No life expected." But the human heard something in the static transmission. A voice. A soft, begging voice. "Please. Help, my child. Please." His heart froze for a moment. He replayed the signal again. It was faint, broken, but real. Someone was still alive down there. A mother with her child. The eye warned him again. "Storm activity is extreme. Landing is not advisable. Survival chances below 20%. The human looked at the chaos on his screen. The swirling clouds and the massive storms covering the planet. Every system told him to turn away. Every rule told him to continue his route. But the sound of that mother's voice did not let him go. 20% is still enough, he whispered, and he turned his ship around. Against every warning, every danger, and every bit of logic, he prepared to land on a dying world, down on the planet. The alien mother stared at the sky with tired eyes. Her child asked in a soft voice, "Mama, are we going to die?" She hugged him tighter and lied gently, "No, my child. Someone will come. Someone must come." But deep inside she had lost hope. No one had come for 3 days. No one cared about a mother with a sick child, not even their own people. The ground beneath her feet shook as another wave hit the remains of the island. The child screamed and held her tighter. She knew they had only minutes left. She closed her eyes and prayed one last time. Just then, a faint light broke through the clouds. A distant glow at first, then brighter and brighter. Something was coming down through the storm. Something was fighting the wind, forcing its way toward them. The mother gasped. Her knees weakened. She held her child higher so he could see it. "Mama, what is that?" The child whispered, "A ship. It's a ship." She whispered back, her voice shaking with disbelief. The light grew larger as the human cruiser pushed through the storm. Lightning struck around it, but it kept coming. Waves crashed, but it refused to turn back. It was the most impossible thing she had ever seen. A human had heard her call. A human had come for her. A human was risking his life to reach them. When the cruiser finally broke the clouds and descended toward them, the mother fell to her knees in the cold water. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she cried, "Please, please save us." The child reached his small hand toward the ship like he was reaching for hope itself. And the human, inside the shaken cockpit, whispered to himself, "Hold on. I'm coming." The hook ends with the ship struggling to land while the island begins to break apart beneath the mother's feet. Will he reach in time? Will the planet collapse first? The suspense grows as everything hangs by a thread. The human pilot gripped the controls tightly. His cruiser shook so violently that even the metal walls groaned under the storm's pressure. Winds hit the ship like giant invisible fists, trying to throw it back into the sky. Lightning flashed around him again and again, bright enough to blind him for a second each time. But he kept pushing forward, refusing to turn away. "Stabilizers failing," the AI warned. "Shields at 40%. Crash probability high." The system gave one warning after another. But he ignored every single one. He had made his choice. He was not leaving a mother and child to die alone on a flooded planet. He lowered the cruiser into the storm layer. The ship shook like a leaf in a hurricane. Rain smashed against the windows so hard it sounded like rocks. Waves below roared so loudly that he could hear their thunder through the hull. Still, he pushed down further. "Come on. Come on," he whispered. He tightened his seat straps as another massive gust of wind tried to flip the ship sideways. The cruiser spun for a moment, alarms screaming, but he fought the controls. Forcing the ship to level again, through the thick clouds he could finally see the surface. Or what was left of it. Everything was water, endless. Violent water stretching to the horizon. He scanned the sensors, searching for the life signal he heard earlier. There, he breathed when a tiny blinking dot appeared. A small patch of land, barely the size of a house, stood above the waves. And on it he saw them, a mother kneeling in water, holding her child against her chest. The child waving his tiny hand toward the sky. The human's heart tightened. "I'm coming, little one," he said softly. But the storm was not done with him. A violent wind hit the cruiser from behind. The ship lurched forward dangerously, almost smashing into the ocean. The cockpit lights flickered. The monitors glitched. The AI shouted, "Critical altitude failure. Engines overheating. Recommend immediate retreat." He shouted back, "I'm not leaving." He pulled the controls upward, just enough to stop the ship from diving into the waves. The engines screamed like dying animals, but they held. The ship steadied again. He lowered the cruiser slowly toward the island. The landing gears extended, shaking like they were moments from snapping apart. Another flash of lightning lit up the sky. Another thunder blast shook the clouds. And the mother looked up again, tears streaming down her cheeks. She cried louder this time. He came. He really came. Her voice broke with both disbelief and relief. But the planet was not giving them time. A massive wave began forming on the horizon. A wall of water rising higher and higher. The child screamed at the sight. "Mama!" "Water, big water." The mother hugged him tightly, whispering, "Hold on, my child. Hold on a little more." The human saw the wave too. His eyes widened. "We need to be fast," he muttered. He tried to land faster, but landing fast in such a storm was suicide. Still, he had no choice. The cruiser touched down roughly, bouncing as the wet ground cracked under it. The ship tilted dangerously, one side sinking into mud and broken rock. "Structure unstable," the AI warned. The human didn't wait. He jumped out of his seat, grabbed a rescue blanket and emergency gear, then slammed the cockpit door open. The storm hit him like he had stepped into another world. Rain blasted his face, wind punched his body. But he forced himself to keep moving. He ran toward the mother and child, yelling over the storm, "Hold on. I'm here." The mother lifted her head. Her eyes widened in shock when she saw a human running toward her. Soaked, determined, fearless, she cried, "Please, save my child." The human nodded without hesitation. "I will," he said. He scooped the child into his arms. The little boy clung to him, wrapping his small arms around the human's neck. The mother tried to stand, but her legs were weak from days of cold water. She stumbled, almost falling. The human grabbed her arm. "I've got you," he said firmly. "Don't let go." Behind them, the ground cracked loudly. The rising wave roared closer. The small island began splitting apart, pieces of rock breaking into the sea one after another. The human held the child tight, supported the mother with his other hand, and he forced his way back toward the ship through the storm. Every step was a fight, every breath was a battle. But he did not stop. He refused to stop, because he had already chosen. These two lives were now his responsibility, and he would not fail them. The human tightened his grip on the child as the storm grew even angrier. Thunder smashed across the sky like giant drums. The wind twisted around them like a living creature trying to snatch the child away. The mother stumbled behind him, her legs weak, her breath sharp and shallow from the cold water that had soaked her for days. "Stay close to me," the human shouted, his voice fighting against the storm. The child clung to his neck, shaking, his tiny fingers gripping the human's jacket with all the strength he had. The mother tried to walk faster, but exhaustion made her stumble again and again. Still, she did not let go of the human's arm. She knew he was their only hope. Behind them, the island cracked loudly. A huge piece of rock split apart and fell into the swirling ocean. Water surged in to fill the empty space, creating a wave that almost knocked the mother off her feet. The human quickly grabbed her waist and pulled her forward. "We have no time," he yelled. "Move! The ground is breaking." The mother nodded weakly. Her eyes stayed fixed on her child's small face, as if reminding herself why she had to keep going. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Please, please let him live." They were halfway to the ship when another deafening crash came from above. The remains of a ruined tower, half broken by storms, finally collapsed under its own weight. A massive chunk of metal and stone fell straight toward them. The human saw it before the mother did. He pushed her aside and shielded the child with his body. Boom! The tower piece smashed into the ground just a few feet away, sending water exploding into the air. Waves drenched them, knocking the mother to her knees again. The child cried out in fear, burying his face into the human's shoulder. "It's okay, kid. I've got you," the human said. His own breathing heavy, he lifted the mother once more, this time putting her arm over his shoulder so she wouldn't fall again. Her voice was barely audible as she whispered, "I can't walk. Please, don't leave us." "I'm not leaving either of you," the human replied. He spoke with such certainty that the mother's shaking stopped for a moment. His voice was the only thing that felt strong in a world that was breaking apart. They reached the edge of the sinking island. Only 10 meters away stood the cruiser, its engines running, lights flickering. But the ground between them and the ship was barely stable. Cracks spread across it like spider webs, opening wider every second. The human stepped carefully, testing each patch of ground before placing his weight on it. The mother followed his movements exactly, her hand gripping the fabric of his jacket so she wouldn't lose balance. A sudden explosion of thunder made the child scream again. Lightning hit the water only a few steps from them, turning it bright white for a breathless moment. "Hurry!" the human urged. He could see the wave behind them growing larger. Not just a wave, a wall of water, tall enough to swallow the entire island, tall enough to crush their ship if it reached them first. The mother looked back and gasped in horror. She pushed herself faster, even though her legs trembled like they might collapse. "Please save my baby," she cried, her voice breaking. "He's the only thing I have left. You both are getting out of here," the human replied firmly. "Just a little more." They reached the ship ramp. The human placed the child inside first, wrapping him in a thermal blanket so he wouldn't freeze from the storm-chilled air. The child still cried, but held tightly to the blanket. His eyes wide with fear but filled with trust, he whispered. "Don't leave, Mama." "I won't," the human said. He ran back to the mother, grabbing her hands and pulling her up the ramp. But the ground beneath her suddenly cracked open. Her foot slipped into the gap, trapping her knee. She screamed in pain. The human dropped to his knees instantly, trying to lift the rock off her foot. The wave roared behind them, louder than thunder. "Hurry!" The mother begged. "Please, don't let the wave reach my child." Adrenaline surged through the human with one desperate pull. Using every bit of strength he had left, he freed her foot and carried her up the ramp. He slammed the ship door shut right as the wave crashed onto the broken island. Water smashed against the cruiser with earth-shaking force. Inside the ship, the mother collapsed onto the floor. Holding her child, sobbing in relief, the human stood above them. Soaked, breathing heavily, but determined. "We're not safe yet," he said softly, "but you're alive. And I'm not letting anything take you now." Part 3 ends with the wave hitting the ship again, threatening to pull it under, and the engine struggling to lift them back into the sky. The cruiser shook violently as the giant waves smashed against its hull. For a moment, the human thought the entire ship would flip over. Warning lights flashed red everywhere. Alarms screamed through the cockpit like desperate voices begging for action. The engine sputtered, coughed, and fought to stay alive inside the cabin. The alien mother held her child close. The boy buried his face in her chest. Trembling with fear, she whispered softly, trying to calm him even though her own voice shook. "It's okay. He will save us. He is trying." Her eyes lifted toward the cockpit. Filled with fear but also with hope, the human jumped into the pilot's seat. His clothes dripping, his breath short and sharp. He grabbed the controls with wet hands and forced the ship upright as the water tried to pull it down. "Come on. Come on, lift," he shouted through clenched teeth. The cruiser responded slowly. The engines roared louder. Smoke filling the back vents, the II repeated its cold warning. Ship integrity falling, hydraulic systems unstable, escape impossible. But the human slammed the override button. "Not impossible," he growled. "Not today." Another wave hit them, lifting the cruiser and slamming it down again like a toy in a storm. The mother screamed and shielded her child as they were thrown to the floor. The boy cried out, clutching his mother's arm tightly, "Make it stop. Please make it stop." The human glanced back and shouted, "Hold on. I need seconds, just seconds." He powered up the thrusters to maximum. The ship's frame rattled, metal panels groaning in pain. The engines glowed bright white from overuse, but the cruiser slowly began to rise. Only a meter, then another, but the water wasn't done yet. Another towering wave rose behind them, even larger than the one before. It looked like a moving mountain of dark water. Angry and hungry, the mother gasped, "The planet! It's collapsing." She held her child tighter as the wave drew closer. The human saw it too. His heartbeat sped up. He pulled every lever, pushed every button that could give the ship more lift. The engines screamed louder, shaking as if they might tear apart. "Faster!" He yelled, "We need altitude now." The cruiser rose higher, 10 meters above the water, then 20. The wave behind them grew so tall it touched the dark clouds above. It rushed forward with terrifying speed. The human clenched his jaw. Not enough. They weren't high enough. The waves slammed into the ship's underside, sending it spinning sideways. The mother and child were thrown across the cabin again. The human grabbed the stabilizer controls and forced the cruiser upright with pure strength. "Stay together," he yelled, his voice cut through the storm like a blade. The engines flickered, the lights dimmed. The cruiser trembled as if taking its last breath. But the human refused to give up. He pushed the thrusters past the safe limit, past the warning zone, past every rule he had ever learned. The ship jerked upward so quickly that the mother gasped. Her child clung to her clothes. Crying into her shoulder, she looked toward the cockpit. Tears mixing with rainwater. "Please, keep us alive," she whispered. The human did not look back. But he heard her, and he pushed harder. The wave chased them upward. So tall it almost grabbed the cruiser's tail. For a moment, it looked like the water would swallow them whole. But then, finally, the engines roared at full strength. The ship shot upward like a bullet, leaving the collapsing world beneath them. The cruiser broke through the thick storm clouds. Bright light hit the cabin for the first time in days. Golden sunlight touched the mother's wet skin. The child peeked out from her arms, eyes wide with surprise. "It's warm," he whispered. The mother smiled weakly through her tears. "Yes, it is." The human let out a long, shaking breath. His whole body trembled with exhaustion, but relief washed over him as he saw the storm shrinking below them. The planet's surface now looked like a swirling ocean of destruction. Everything was gone, every building, every life, every memory, drowned under dark waves. The mother moved closer to the cockpit. She knelt behind the human, still holding her child. "You saved us," she said in a soft, trembling voice. He didn't answer for a moment, still staring at the destroyed world below. Then he spoke. "No," he whispered. "You saved him. I only helped." The mother's eyes filled again. She whispered, "No one else came for us. Only you." The child reached his small hand toward the human and said quietly, "Thank you." "Human." The human looked back, for the first time since landing. He smiled. "You're safe now," he said. "But our journey isn't over." Part 4 ends with the cruiser shaking again, damaged, low fuel, and still far from safety. Their escape from the planet was only the beginning of their real fight to survive. The cruiser continued rising through the sky. But inside the cabin a heavy silence settled. The storm was behind them. Yet the fear inside the mother and child remained like a shadow that refused to leave. The human pilot adjusted the broken controls, trying to keep the ship steady as sparks flickered from damaged wires. The engines hummed weakly, as if they were exhausted from the battle they had just fought. The mother sat on the floor with her child wrapped in the thermal blanket. Her clothes were still wet, her skin cold, but her arms stayed tightly around the boy. She watched the human quietly, studying every small movement he made. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe normally. The child peeked out from the blanket. His large eyes were filled with fear that did not fade even though they were away from the storm. He clutched the human's jacket gently with one hand and whispered, Are they coming back for us?" The human turned his seat slightly. "Who?" he asked softly. The child lowered his head. "My people." The mother swallowed painfully. She touched her son's cheek and whispered, "They will not come." Her voice cracked with pain. "They already left us behind." The human frowned. He had assumed the planet was evacuated in a hurry, that the mother and child were simply missed or trapped, but the way she spoke, it sounded like something else, something darker. He asked quietly, "They abandoned you on purpose?" The mother nodded slowly. Her hands tightened around the blanket as she forced herself to speak. "Our people believe that. A child who is born weak brings misfortune." Her voice trembled. "My son is small, and he often gets sick. They called him a bad omen." The child hid his face, ashamed. The human's chest tightened with anger he had not expected to feel. He knelt beside them and said firmly, "There is nothing wrong with him. He is just a child." But the mother's pain ran deep. She whispered, "When the storms came, the leaders lied and said the transport ships were full. They took everyone else, even strangers. But they pushed us away. They said the floods were punishment, and we were the cause." The human felt sick hearing her words. He looked at the little boy's small hands, trembling from both cold and memory. He could not understand how anyone could abandon a mother and child to die. He asked carefully, Did no one try to help you? The mother shook her head. Only one elder wanted to take us. But the others forced him to leave us behind. Her voice cracked again. They believed the storm would wash away our curse. The child suddenly whispered, "Mama." I heard them say they were glad we would drown, they said. It was better this way. The mother held him tightly as tears ran down her face. "No, my child," she cried. "No mother is glad to lose her child. It was their cruelty." "Not truth." The human placed a gentle hand on the child's shoulder. "Listen," he said softly. "You survived because you were strong. Both of you did." The child looked up slowly. His eyes red from crying. "You came for us," he whispered. "No one else did." The human gave a small smile. "Of course I came. No one deserves to be left behind." The mother looked at him with deep gratitude. But fear still lingered in her voice. "Where will we go now?" The human turned back to the cockpit and checked the map. The cruiser's systems flickered weakly. Fuel reserves were dangerously low. Engine temperature was unstable. The navigation screen kept glitching. He sighed quietly. "We can't reach any major colony. This ship is too damaged, but..." He zoomed out the map, revealing a faint marker. "There's a small trade outpost nearby. No government control, no strict rules. They might accept you." The mother's eyes filled with hope, but the child suddenly grabbed the human's sleeve with trembling fingers. "Will they send us back to our people?" He asked softly. "Will they say we're cursed too?" The human crouched down and looked the child in the eyes. "No one is sending you back," he said firmly. "As long as I'm here. No one is taking you anywhere you don't want to go." The child's lips trembled. "Promise?" The human placed a hand over his small hand. "I promise," for the first time. The child gave a tiny, weak smile. The mother's shoulders loosened as relief washed over her. She whispered, "Thank you." "Human, you saved more than our lives." But before they could breathe easier, the ship jolted suddenly. Lights flickered, alarms beeped again. The AI announced, "Engine overheating. Fuel cell damage detected. Emergency landing required." The human's eyes narrowed. He strapped himself in and said loudly, "Hold on, we're not safe yet." Part 5 ends with the cruiser shaking violently. Their next danger approaching fast, and the child's fear returning as they prepare for another fight to survive. The cruiser lurched again, shaking so hard that the mother instinctively pulled her child closer. Loose wires sparked near the ceiling, flickering like tiny lightning bolts inside the cabin. The engines growled from deep within the ship, a rough, painful sound that warned they were close to shutting down completely. The human tightened his seatbelt and grabbed the controls. He kept his voice steady, but the tension in his shoulders showed the truth. They were in trouble again, serious trouble. The mother crawled toward the cockpit. Her child wrapped safely in the blanket. "What is happening?" she asked, trying to hide the fear in her shaking voice. The human kept his eyes on the blinking red screens. One after another, systems turned from yellow to red. The ship was dying. "We lost part of the fuel cell," he said. "If we don't land soon, the engines will shut off." The child whispered from the mother's arms. "Will we fall again?" His voice trembled like a small bird in winter. The human turned slightly. He spoke in a calm, strong tone meant to comfort them. "No," he said. "I won't let that happen." But inside his mind, the truth weighed heavily. The symptoms were bad, very bad. An overheating engine, low fuel, and unstable hydraulics meant one thing: a crash was possible. Maybe even likely. The mother watched him closely. Her voice softened. "You already risked everything for us. You don't have to keep going." Her words made him freeze. He turned toward her slowly, his face shocked. Almost offended, he said firmly, "I'm not stopping. You and your child are under my protection, and that means I finish what I started." The mother felt her chest tighten. No one had ever spoken for her like that. Not her people, not their leaders. Not even the ones who pretended to care. She whispered, "Why?" The human looked at her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "Because you deserved better. Because no one should die alone on a drowning world. And because your child." "He reminds me of someone." The mother blinked in surprise. "Who?" The human took a slow breath. "My sister's son," he said. "He was born sick too. People ignored him. Treated him like he was weak. But I knew he was strong. He just needed someone to fight for him." The mother's eyes softened. Her heart warmed. She whispered, "You are fighting for us." The child peeked from under the blanket. "Are we like your family now?" he asked in a small voice. The human smiled gently. "If you want," he said. The child nodded quickly. "I want," before the moment could settle. The ship jerked violently. The lights flickered again, turning the cabin dim. The ice cold voice cut through the heavy atmosphere. "Warning, engine temperature approaching critical levels. Immediate action required." The human snapped back to the controls. He scanned the star map again, searching for anything, anywhere they could land. The nearest colony was too far. They would run out of fuel long before that. He zoomed out further. A tiny blinking point appeared on the far right, a small, unregistered moon station. Not official, not safe, not well known, but reachable. "There," he said quickly. "We're heading for that moon." The mother stepped closer. "Is it safe?" The human answered honestly, "I don't know. But it's better than letting the engines die here." The child asked, "Will they hurt us?" The human turned and said firmly, "No one is hurting you. Not while I'm breathing." He angled the cruiser toward the moon. The ship groaned loudly, trying to obey. Sparks shot from one of the panels, but he smacked it with his hand. "Don't you quit on me now," he muttered at the machine. "We're almost there." As they flew, the child slowly reached out and touched the human's shoulder. "Thank you for not leaving us behind," he whispered. The human placed his hand over the child's hand softly. "I made a promise, and I don't break promises." The mother's voice trembled as she spoke. "You risked your life for strangers." The human shook his head. "You're not strangers anymore." For the first time, the mother lowered her head and cried silently. Not from fear, not from pain, but from relief. From the realization that someone finally cared enough to stay. Outside the window, the small moon came into view. Its dusty surface full of old structures, broken dishes, and abandoned lights. The station looked half alive. Half dead, but it was hope, and hope was enough. The human took a deep breath. "Hold on," he said. "This landing will be rough." Part 6 ends with the cruiser descending toward the moon, its engines screaming, smoke rising, and the mother clutching her child as they prepare for another dangerous landing that will decide their future. The moon station grew larger in the cruiser's window. A lonely, dusty world with broken towers and dim lights. It looked abandoned, forgotten, and dangerous. But for the mother and her child, it was still a chance to live. A chance they never expected to have again. The engines hissed and coughed as the cruiser descended. Smoke filled the back vents. Warning alarms flashed bright red. The human kept his hands steady on the controls, his jaw tight with focus. "Stay with me. Just a little longer," he whispered to the ship. The mother held her child close. She lowered her head and prayed silently for the landing. The child squeezed her hands tightly and whispered, "Will we crash?" The human looked back and said softly, "No. We're going to make it." The cruiser hit the moon's surface with a heavy jolt. It bounced once, twice, skidded across the ground, throwing dust in every direction. Metal screamed under the pressure. Panels shook violently, but slowly, painfully. The ship slid to a stop. Silence followed, a silence so deep it felt unreal. The human exhaled sharply. "It's over," he said. "We're down." The mother covered her face with both hands and cried softly. The child hugged her neck tightly, whispering, We lived, Mama. We lived. The human checked the systems. Everything was dead. The engines, the shields, the navigation. Their ship had taken them as far as it could. Now it rested like a tired warrior. Broken, but victorious, the mother whispered. What will we do now? Her voice was full of both fear and hope. The human unstrapped himself and stood up slowly. We find shelter, he said. We find food. We find people who won't hurt you. He opened the main hatch. Cold moon air rushed inside, dry, dusty, and thin, but peaceful compared to the storm they escaped. The three of them stepped outside. The child held the human's hand tightly. The mother walked beside them, limping slightly from her injured foot. The moon surface stretched before them, quiet, empty, full of scattered buildings and flickering lights. One building stood out, a tall structure with a glowing door panel. The human pointed. There, he said. That must be the station entry. They approached carefully. With each step, the mother's heart pounded. She feared rejection. She feared someone yelling, pushing, or refusing them again. The child kept whispering, will they hate us too? The human squeezed his small hand. No, he said firmly, and if they do, they'll answer to me. At the door, the human pressed the panel. The old system beeped, scanned them, then flickered weakly. A voice crackled through the speakers. State your purpose. The human stood straight. I am a rescue pilot, he said. I saved a mother and her child from a flooded planet. We seek refuge. There was silence. Long silence. The mother's hands shook. The child pressed against the human's leg. Finally, the door opened with a long metallic groan. Warm yellow light spilled out. A tall man in a patched uniform stepped forward. He looked tired, worn, but not unkind. He studied the mother and child, then looked at the human. You risked landing here with that broken ship? He asked. Yes, the human replied. They would have died. The man's eyes softened slightly. Then you did right, he said. You all can come inside, the mother gasped. Her knees weakened with relief. She whispered, Thank you. Thank you. The child looked up at the man and said softly, Please don't make us leave. The man shook his head. No one is throwing you out, he said gently. You'll be safe here. They entered the warm hall. For the first time in days they felt heat, safety, a chance to breathe without fear. The human guided them to a resting area. Blankets, water, food. The child ate slowly at first, then suddenly faster as hunger took over. The mother watched him cry, laugh softly, alive, warm, safe. She looked at the human with eyes full of gratitude. You saved us, she whispered. You saved my son. You saved me. The human shook his head. No, he said quietly. You survived because you fought. You never gave up. She reached out and touched his hand gently. You answered a call no one else heard. You saw us what our own people didn't. The child climbed into the human's lap. His small voice soft. Can you stay with us? The human smiled warmly. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Your family now, the mother cried silently as she watched them. For the first time since the floods began, she felt hope, real hope, a new life, a new beginning. Part 7 ends with the human, the mother, and the child sitting together under warm lights, safe at last. A broken family rebuilt by the courage of one human who refused to walk away.